Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special question and answer session with Aaron Marcus, America's premier acting and commercial modeling career coach. Let's get right into some questions and answers, Aaron. Uh,
Sounds good, Joel.
this one comes from Jen. She lives in Virginia Beach, Virginia, United States, and she asked the question, what should a model wear to an open call? Something fashionable or just something simple like skinny jeans and a regular shirt?
Hey, that's a great question. I definitely would not do anything that's too fashionable. You really don't want the clothing to stand out. You want people to be able to see you, and you want people to look at you. Probably the two key things: make sure you wear some form-fitting clothing so people can get a sense of body type. And also, I would make sure that you're not wearing too much makeup. I mean, very, very, very little makeup. Um, you just want people to be able to see you so they get a sense of what you look like in person, and then they understand that on a set, certainly things will change. But just make sure that it's both your body type is well defined and that people can clearly see your face.
Very good. This question comes from Roy from Gastonia, North Carolina. And his question has to do with Broadway. He wants to know that if you have any tips on getting work in the local theater scene in his hometown.
Well, the key thing is, number one, find out where the plays are taking place. And the second thing is make sure that you have two really strong contrasting monologues. So I would have one that is more serious, I would have one that's more comedic, and then audition, audition, and audition. Keep auditioning as much as you possibly can. Prior to the audition, find out what will be taking place at the audition. Are they going to have you read monologues, or are they going to have you read right from the play? But just talking about Broadway, you want to get as much experience as you possibly can prior to heading to New York, so that once you've developed a really good resume, you've done a lot of theater, you'll be much, much better prepared for auditioning on Broadway.
Fantastic. This question comes from Nay Nay. I believe I'm pronouncing your name right, Nay Nay, hopefully. He lives in Baltimore, Maryland right now, but he's originally from Ghana, Africa. He says, I'm 34, African, and I have the looks for modeling. I've got a great physique, but my height is only 5'7". What are my chances?
Okay, well, in the fashion world, like, I would never say never, but in the fashion world, it's going to be really difficult. I'm sure there have been some exceptions to the rule, but pretty much in the fashion world, if you're talking about wanting to do runway work in Paris and New York, I mean, you're looking at somebody who, for males, 6 feet to 6'2". What I would suggest is very seriously start looking into commercial modeling. If you're saying you've got a great body type, look, there are tons of magazines where they need guys with great bodies. There are tons of catalogs where they need people with great bodies. And just in the commercial world in general, sometimes they need people who are very, very fit. So what you want to look into is commercial modeling.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Aaron. This is from Giselle. Giselle lives in Virginia in the United States. And she asked the question, how do you choose your own agent? How will you know if they're the right one? And when should I start acting and modeling if I'm still in school?
Okay, well, let me answer your first question right now. As far as how do you know if the agent is right for you, and I know this is going to sound a little generic, but in some ways it really is. It's like, well, how do I know if the person I'm dating is the person for me? You've got to go out there, you've got to interview, you've got to mingle, you've got to date, you've got to ask questions, you've got to, use your gut instincts, and also, do your research. And what you'll do is you'll find if there's an agent that seems to have a true interest in you, somebody who's really involved in the industry, somebody who is submitting lots of other people, having their talent book jobs, then you know that this is a person to start off with. And the nice thing is, look, in the worst case scenario, you can always change. You're not locked in forever. And now, as far as, if you are in school, when, should you start trying to get acting and modeling work? I would say now, if you can make sure that school is still your number one priority, and then try to get acting and modeling jobs on the side. When I first got started, I was a full-time college student. And I did the acting and modeling on a very part-time basis. And it worked out really well. And I was able to do both for 2 years. And it was after those 2 years is when I decided that I wanted to pursue acting and modeling on a full-time basis.
That's great. This is from Warren. He lives in Owings Mills, Maryland, United States. He asks the question about Google Voice. He noticed that you mentioned something about Google Voice, and he missed a little bit of what you said in your tip. Could you just kind of reiterate what Google Voice is used for, how you can use it, and where you can find access to that?
Sure, Google Voice is incredible. Basically, for people who don't feel comfortable or don't want to put their personal phone number either on their resume or on their composite sheet, what you can do is you can actually get a free phone number from Google. And what you do is you go to google.com/voice. And you have to fill out some information. One of them is your zip code. And then you will see a list of a number of phone numbers that you can use free. It becomes your phone number. And then what people generally do is they will have that phone number placed on their resume, placed on their composite sheet. And then when anybody calls that number, they set it up so that it gets forwarded to either their cell phone or their home phone, whichever number they want to designate it to. But at least that way you're not giving out your personal phone information to the world. So it's an incredible service, and it can be very, very helpful to people, and it doesn't cost anything.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. This is from Ryan, Great Falls, Virginia, United States. Here's his question. I am non-union. I feel like the more I work, the further in debt I go because the training, travel, and sometimes even wardrobe are more costly than the money I'm making from working on the set. I've worked on projects that have union workers, but I can't seem to get union credit. Also, some actors never go union. Can working non-union be a way to make a living for myself?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to make a living as a non-union actor. I'm assuming some people do it, but the wages generally are lower than when you are a union member, if you're in SAG-AFTRA. And I can tell you where the biggest difference is. Even like it's like, for instance, when you mentioned wardrobe, well, if you are a union member, not that this is that much money, but if you are wearing your own wardrobe and you are a principal in this project, then you are reimbursed for your clothing because they assume that you're going to have to get it dry cleaned or washed, and so you get reimbursed. But I'll tell you where the real money is for union actors, and it's in commercials. And when you do a non-union commercial, you get paid a session fee, and then that's it. And so whatever you make that day, that's as much you're going to make, and that TV commercial could run for the next 10 years. If you are a union actor and you do a TV commercial, then as long as they continue to run it, every 13 weeks you will get a check sent to you. And those are your residuals. And without going into all the details right now, there are some other scenarios where you get paid every time the commercial airs, but without getting real technical about it, that's where the money is. And look, it's difficult to make a living at it even if you are a union actor, but you will get paid much more money. And you will have more backing if you are a union member. So whenever you feel like you are ready, and if you are living somewhere, I believe you're in the Virginia area, and there's plenty of union work in the area. So, if you're ready, then I would seriously consider looking into joining the union.
Okay. This question is from Cleo. Cleo lives in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. He has two children that want to act and model. He has an 11-year-old girl and a 10-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter, 10-year-old son, and he wants to know how can he proceed to get his son and daughter ready for auditions and basically prepare them to become actors and models.
Well, there are a couple things that you can do. Probably the most important thing, and especially with where you are living, you're living in the state of Maryland. And this could change at some point in the future, but from what I've been told, there are lots of agents in this area who do not represent children. So those people find managers of children. These are people who manage the career of children. And they can help you with finding classes. Some of them might even offer some kind of classes, or they will give you the names of people to go to and people to study with. And then typically what will happen is when there is a production that's happening and they need children, they will get in touch with agents, and agents will submit the adults, and then the agents will contact the managers of children and send them to the audition. So probably the best thing to do is try to find a manager and then let the manager help you help your children, prepare before auditions take place.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. This comes from Eddie. Eddie lives in Springfield, Massachusetts, United States. He says, should your agent suggest the type of wardrobe you should wear to an audition? I just landed a part as a dead gangster from the 1930s. I was surprised to see some of the actors looking like something out of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Eddie. And I always ask my agent about wardrobe because typically I don't know. Even if they say to me, well, you're auditioning for a business guy. Well, there are many different business types. Am I wearing a suit? Am I wearing a sports coat and tie? Am I wearing khakis and, I don't know, penny loafers and just a button-down shirt? So typically the agent's going to have a lot more information about the project than I am because they see the breakdowns. And so what I always do is I will ask the agent. Hopefully the agent will know. What is also a really good idea if you're going to an audition and you're not really sure, bring a variety of things, and you can always leave things in the car. And once you walk into the casting office, then find out very specifically what kind of wardrobe would be appropriate, and that will give you time. If you need to make a change, then you can. So it's a great idea. Ask your agent, and if there's ever any kind of uncertainty, just bring some extra wardrobe, and that way you'll be prepared and make sure you give yourself plenty of time.
Great. Monica from Wilmington, Delaware, United States. She asks a really interesting question. She says, what is the fastest way for a non-fashion model over 25 years old to make the most money? Print, commercials, or extra work? Question mark.
Okay, sure. Well, being an extra won't give you the most amount of money. I mean, typically, if you are non-union, then and look, it can vary from day to day, but you're probably looking at earning anywhere between 75 and maybe $100 a day working as a non-union extra. If you are doing TV commercials and you're non-union, once again, because there's no union minimum, they can pay you anything they want. It could be $100, it could be $300 for the day. As a commercial model, you mentioned you live in the Delaware area. Well, typically I can tell you in the Philadelphia area, which will be the closest larger market for you than Delaware, you're looking at about $125 to $150 an hour as a commercial model. However, if you ever decide to join the union and you book a TV commercial, and that is where the real money is for actors, for union actors. And once again, these numbers can change, but at least it will give you a general idea. It's around $592 for an 8-hour day. And if you go into overtime past 8 hours, you get additional money. If your commercial is running depending on where the ad is running, the larger the market, the more money you make, and you get residuals every 13 weeks if the commercial is continuing to air or if they put the commercial on hold, which means they're not currently airing the commercial, but they might at some point in the future, and they'll still pay you a session fee just to prevent you from doing a TV commercial for a competitor. So as a long-winded way of answering your question, I would say If you are in the union, or if you decide to join the union, TV commercials will give you the most money. Commercial modeling will be very helpful to you as well. And I would say being a non-union extra would be at the bottom of the list.
Okay. So this question is from Zachary in Bell Harbor, New York, United States. He asks, where and how can I be put into a situation where I will have a face-to-face with a game-changing agent? I just know that if I were given the opportunity to make a direct connection with someone of influence, I would make an incredible impression and launch my career into unimaginable levels of success and stardom.
Fantastic. Well, I tell you, I love the way you're thinking. And you know what? It's a matter of you making that happen. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. I'm not sure how far you live outside of New York City, but let's just assume that you can get to New York City pretty easily. One of the things that I would do is I would find out there are a there are lots of different schools in New York, and quite often, and I'm not talking about types of schools where you get degrees. I'm talking about schools where they offer classes, acting classes. Quite often, they will hire an agent to teach a class. Maybe I shouldn't say quite, that does happen. I guess, well, that does happen pretty often, where you can find an agent who teaches a class. So what I would be doing is I would be doing a lot of research, finding out, all these different classes that are being offered, finding out who is teaching those classes, look them up, and see, what kind of agent they are, and take the class. And that will give you a face-to-face meeting with somebody who could change your life, and you could also change the agent's life as well if you have tremendous success. The other thing is sometimes they have showcases where basically you show up and they have casting directors, they have agents, they have managers, you meet people, you perform, and that's another opportunity. There's also a book that you can purchase. It's very inexpensive, and it's called The Call Sheet. It will list every agent and manager in New York and also in LA, and start going through the call sheet. And what I would do is find out which agent seems right for you, and then once again, do some research. Find out how you can approach them, how you can make contact with them. And that's what I would do. So don't wait until the agent finds you. You go out and find the agent and show them the same kind of positive attitudes that you have, and it just that confidence that you have, and hopefully things will really happen for you.
Great. This is from Rex. He lives in Brookfield, Wisconsin, United States. He wants to know how he can become a commercial director, someone who directs TV commercials.
Yeah, well, there are a number of ways that you can get involved with that. I would start off by basically being almost like an apprentice. They're called PAs, production assistants. And what I would do is contact all of the various production offices in the area. If you wanted to really do some great research, I would also find some advertising agencies in the area and find out which advertising agencies do TV commercials. And you might be speaking to a copywriter, you might speak with an art director or a creative director at the ad agency, and ask them, who are some of the production companies that do TV commercials? And then I would contact them. I would go straight to the production company and say that you are interested in doing PA work, being a production assistant, and watch. You'll be doing some very basic things, but boy, what an opportunity to learn how to direct a commercial, how these things are put together, what the director actually does, and hopefully you do enough of these and you make a connection with a variety of directors. And just really watch and listen if you get the opportunity to ask questions. And that might be a great way to start doing commercials. The other thing too is, why don't you try to shoot some of your own commercials? Maybe you can, find some actors that you know of, come up with ideas for a commercial for a specific product, and go out and start shooting them. And who knows, you might even find that there's a certain product who loves your commercial and they might want to use it or have you direct one of their commercials as well.
Great. This is from Rose. She lives in Dana Point, California. She's 16 years old. Her question is, I am told I have great acting skills, a great resume, and great training, but I can't get an agent. What can I do without it costing me a fortune?
Okay. Well, number one, it shouldn't cost you anything to get an agent, just so that you know. The only time that you pay an agent is when you book a job and you make money and you pay them a percentage of whatever you earn. And depending on whether you're union or non-union, that will define what the percentage is. And just so that you know, it's 20% if you are a non-union actor typically. And if you are a union actor, as of today, at this very moment, it's 10% commission fee. So, with all of your credits and you're not able to find an agent, I'm not really sure what is happening. Perhaps if I, were able to talk with you, we could come up with ideas. Here's one thought though, without having seen anything. Maybe your headshot is simply not selling you well. Maybe your headshot really doesn't look good. Maybe it doesn't represent you well. Maybe it doesn't put you into the right category. Maybe it looks too fashiony. Maybe it's too posed. Maybe it's not interesting. Because if you have a great headshot and you have a really strong resume and you are submitting it to agents who represent 16-year-olds, then people should have a real interest. One thing to also keep in mind, maybe you're submitting your headshot and resume to people who don't represent, people in your age category. So that's something I would check out very carefully as well. And if you ever want to do a private coaching session with me, we can really go into that in much more detail, and I could look at your specific headshot. I could look at other photos that you have. I could even look at your resume, and maybe your resume needs to be put together in a very different way. Maybe you've got information in there that is really diluting some of the real positive things that you should have on there. Maybe I could help you put that together, and you could always just email me at Aaron, Aaron, at howtomodel.com, and we can talk about it more. But those are the couple of things that I would be keeping in mind, making sure that your headshot looks great and the resume is put together properly. And I guess the third thing is that you are contacting agents who represent people in your age category.
Okay. Okay, this is a great question from Linda in Ontario, Canada. This is a headshot question. My daughter wears her hair up a lot. For her headshot, is it recommended that she wear her hair up or have it down?
Okay, well, honestly, I'm not really sure exactly what you mean by wearing her hair up, but I'll tell you what I would do is I would have her hair looking like other people in her category, so that for her particular look, that the kinds of auditions that she would be having, her hair matches that look. So if the hair makes her look more old-fashioned-y and those aren't the kinds of roles that she's going after, I think that might hurt her. The key thing for the headshot is just make sure that you can look like your headshot. And one other option, this just kind of hit me. What I'd like to do on the back of my resume is have a separate photo. I put it in the upper right-hand corner, so that way people can look at your headshot, they flip it over, look at your resume, and they can still see what you look like. So if you wanted to, you could have two different photos, one with your hair down, if that is a better look for her, and if you wanted, you could always have her hair up in a smaller version on the back of her resume, and that way people can see what she looks like both ways.
Okay, this is from Sam, Baldwin City, Kansas, USA. What are some red flags that I'm about to be scammed?
Whoa, that's a whole workshop all into itself. But let me give you a couple of really good indicators and things to look for. Number one, aside from people asking you to pay to be on their website, which is very common today, Aside from that, you should never be paying an agent anything except for a percentage from a booking that you've gotten. That's one of the things. The other thing that would concern me if somebody is making you all kinds of promises. Something else that would concern me, look, it's one thing if somebody says to you, hey, I think you've got a great look, loved, the read that you just gave at the audition, in my office. But if you're hearing you're going to be a star, you're going to make millions of dollars, you know, nobody can say that with any certainty. Some of the other things that would concern me is if they said, well, we're only going to represent you if you take our classes. Now, it's one thing. Now, the union doesn't allow it, but there are plenty of really good non-union agents who do offer classes. And I understand that because, they want to make sure that the talent they are sending out and submitting for jobs are good, that they are prepared, they're ready to go out and audition because they're representing the talent, they're also representing the agent, so they want you to be really good. So it's one thing if they say, look, we're offering some classes, we highly recommend that you take it, or look, if there's some other classes in town that you want to take, that's great too, you just need more training, that's fine. But if you hear, I'm only going to represent you if you take my classes, and the same thing holds true with photos. If they bring in a really good headshot photographer, or they bring in somebody who takes really good commercial photos, and they say, look, you really need some new pictures, here's somebody who's coming into town, the guy's great, people have had some real success with him, great, okay, that's great. But if they say to you, we're only going to represent you if you shoot with our photographer, that would make me a little bit nervous as well. The one other thing, and this has and I've seen this, actually, I've experienced this personally, and I've followed it through just to see how they do it. But the short version is this. If you start getting emails from some agent, supposed agent in another country, and they want to hire you, they're going to pay you all this money, and they're going to fly in their photographer and makeup artist, and they're going to send you a check that not only covers your fee, because this is an ad that's going to be used throughout Europe or something, but there are additional monies in that check to pay for the photographer and the makeup artist. Watch out, because that is a scam. And what will happen is you will cash the check. It will be on a regular check. You pay the photographer, you pay the makeup artist, and a few days later you'll get a notice from the bank saying that the check really wasn't good, and now you're out that money. So those are some of the things that I would be very careful of.
This question is from Denver, Colorado, Ephraim. Does playing very different characters and personalities in movies and TV come off as inconsistent? In other words, does it leave people wondering awkwardly as to who I really am?
No, look, if you're getting cast as different characters and different kinds of projects, that's incredible. That means people are believing you. That means you are very talented and you can do a lot of different things. There aren't that many people who can do that in a real convincing way. Quite often you'll find, and I'm talking about even with very successful actors, they find themselves in pretty similar kinds of roles because their body type, their look, just everything about them kind of fits a certain kind of mold. So no, I mean, if you have that kind of flexibility and you have that kind of talent and you can do many different things, that's wonderful. And who you really are is irrelevant. Doesn't make any difference. So I think that's a great place to be. Very few people are able to achieve that kind of success.
Okay, this comes from Tracy in California. What do you recommend in those instances? As I asked a bridal photographer, was my first mistake for headshot not to make me up too much, as I wanted to look natural. I ended up not being recognizable by an acquaintance later that day. So I guess she's saying, what are your recommendations? I'm going to try to reword this to have good makeup done for headshots or any other kind of photo session.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I'm sorry to hear about that experience. It's tough. And that's why I really highly recommend that you don't shoot headshots with somebody who's only had experience doing, bridal shows, who's only done weddings, who's only done, other types of photography. you want to shoot with somebody who has experience and knowledge of shooting headshots and using a makeup artist who works with that photographer who also understands how to apply makeup properly for headshots. And one of the things that you definitely want to do in the future is visit the photographer's website and look at the pictures. And even if you know nothing about photography, you're going to be able to look at people's headshots and say, yeah, there's energy, there's life, those people look good to me, even if from a technical point of view, you're clueless as to how that was achieved. You'll see the energy shooting out of the eyes. You'll see this life, this real personality, and that's what you're looking for. So yeah, stick with somebody who knows about headshots when you need a headshot photographer.
Let's try to get to about two more questions here, Aaron, before we have to wrap up for this session. This is from Lakia from Jersey City, New Jersey, United States. What is the best way to pick an acting class? There are hundreds of classes in New York and some classes that are listed on Groupon and Craigslist, but I'm having trouble knowing where to spend my money.
That's a really good question. And here are a couple of thoughts. One is I would get in touch with Backstage, and it's a really good publication. I know they used to do this. I'm assuming they still do it, and you can always check it out. They used to have a special edition that dealt specifically with education. And you'll see a list of just tons and tons and tons of different acting classes. So the next step is you want to go to the websites of a lot of those places and see what is being taught, see who is teaching those classes, and maybe even, and look, just because somebody is not a current actor doesn't mean they're not a great teacher. But something you can do is, if you see an actor's name or whoever is teaching a specific class that interests you, I would go to imdb.com, Internet Movie Database, and look them up and see if they've done any acting. And if they have, chances are they are going to be listed on imdb.com. And then the next step is I would see if you could audit a class. See if you could sit in on a class. Doesn't even have to be the whole class, just to get a general idea of, are they teaching you things that interest you? Are they teaching you things in ways that you can really learn from? The other thing too is, talking with other actors. That's always really very helpful. So even if you're doing extra work in New York one day, talk to some of the other actors and ask them, who are some of the good teachers, who are some of the good classes. And you do that a couple of times and you'll find that certain names of teachers and classes and schools will keep popping up over and over and over again. So it's like looking into a college. You've got to really do your homework, no pun intended, and really make sure that you're spending your money wisely.
Okay, let's try to get to one more question here, Aaron. This is from Kirkland. He's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, USA, down in the South. He says, "Hey, Aaron, I truly appreciate the info that you provided today. This is very insightful. Here's my question. And this is related to the last question, can making films and then acting in those films I make, along with being part of local theater plays, substitute for taking acting classes and lessons?"
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you're doing your own movie and you're acting in the movie, doesn't mean that you're any good. Doesn't mean that you have talent. Doesn't mean that it's believable. Um, Look, it's great to get on the job training, but just because you're doing your own project doesn't mean that it is a really good performance. But I definitely would do that, and certainly getting as much experience as you can. But like you were saying, if you can do some local theater, that is, that's wonderful. See if you can audition and get hired in other people's projects, because when you get hired by somebody else, that's a lot different than when you hire yourself to do a project. But I can tell you, I got a tremendous amount of on-the-job training. I mean, like, I still studied and I still do periodically. But I studied with a variety of people for over 5 years, uh, fairly early on, and then I, periodically will take classes here and there. But a lot of what I learned was from being on sets, even just as an extra, and watching, listening, observing, taking notes, asking other actors about things, and just really, really being very observant will be incredibly helpful to you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron, for spending time with us today answering these questions. I want to just mention three things before we go, real quick. If you haven't joined our Facebook community over at facebook.com/how to model, you really need to do that because there's a growing community of actors and models and agents and casting directors and directors and producers. And obviously, Aaron and all of his great advice is on that page pretty much daily. And it's a great community that's growing. It's a great place to be plugged in. So make sure you head over to facebook.com/how to model and like that page, be a part of the community that's being built there. Also, if you'd like to find out more about programs, anything that Aaron offers, find out more about Aaron and what he offers, go to howtomodel.com. It's a great resource. There's tons of articles and great resources there, and also information about workshops in the past, online workshops, in-person workshops, and coming workshops in the near future. So make sure you head over there to check that out as well. And Aaron mentioned earlier, and this is another mention I want to make, if you are looking to really spend time with someone who will look at your headshot, look at your comp cards, go through every little aspect of your career one-on-one, Aaron does offer one-on-one coaching. Each month he's got a few spots that are open, and if you're interested in that, email him at aaron@howtomodel.com, AARON@howtomodel.com, and just put in the subject line one-on-one coaching. He can set up an appointment to talk about it with you and get that rolling. So that's I would definitely take advantage of that because that can really take your career to the next level. Aaron, thanks again for all the questions and answers you've given us, and we're looking forward to our next Q&A session coming up.
Sounds great, Joel. Thanks.
Thanks.